Lee Goldberg is on a mission to publish the best crime novels in existence. Does that include yours? This episode, an interview with TV writer, novelist, and publisher Lee Goldberg.
Write a good book. That's the most important thing. Too many people are in such a rush to be published, to make money, they're forgetting the most important thing is to write a good book.
I'm Chris Well, and this is DIY Author. You're an author. Maybe you're taking the traditional route. Maybe you've chosen an independent path. Or maybe you want the best of both worlds. Wherever you want to go as a writer, DIY Author is here to help you on your journey with advice, encouragement, and practical tips. Because do it yourself doesn't have to mean do it alone. Welcome to DIY Author. I'm your host, Chris Well. Lee Goldberg is a fascinating interview because he has experience in so many different facets of writing and publishing. Lee and fellow suspense author Joel Goldman launched Brash Books to bring classic crime fiction back into print and to find the fresh new voices of the genre. In this interview, Lee and I talk about traditional publishing versus self-publishing, Kindle worlds, and we talk about Brash Books. Here's that interview. And now I'm speaking with Lee Goldberg. He is an author, he is a television writer and producer, and he's involved in about as many different kinds of writing as anyone that I can think of. And so I'm very excited to speak with him today. Well, first of all, welcome, Lee. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
And just to help give people kind of a frame for our conversation, you have your fingers in, as I said, about every type of publishing. You are a self-publisher. You have been and are currently traditionally published as well. You write or have written books that have that are tie-ins, that have characters created by somebody else. You write books that are your own characters. And then, of course, you write for television and you write for print. And there's just a lot of different kinds of things that you do. But I think probably the place to start for this conversation, for our listeners that would be especially interested in, is that when the self-publishing revolution kind of kicked into gear, you were one of the early people that you had some titles, as I understand it, these were titles that were, backlist. You had them, you said, what the heck, let me just put them up and see what happens. And then they did very well for you. How quickly did you begin to see success with your self-published titles?
Well, as far as I was concerned, any dollar earned was success. These were books that had been played out, that were no longer in print. I had their version of rights letters, and the remaindered copies were sitting in my garage gathering dust. So to me, whether I made $5, $50, or $500, it was found money. I owe Joe Conrath my self-publishing success because he contacted me early on. I think it was in early 2009, somewhere in there, and said, Lee, you should put your novel The Walk on the Kindle. I said, why? I sold 3 copies, 2 to me and 1 to you. It was a bomb. Why would anybody buy the book on the Kindle? And he encouraged me. He said, you have nothing to lose. Just put you have the Microsoft Word file, just put it up there. What's the worst that could happen? And so I put it up there, and I don't know the exact figures, but I think the first day I sold 5, and then 10, then 20, then 30, then 40. It just kept going up, and I realized, holy crap, this is a real opportunity here. I can make some money off these lumps of coal sitting in my garage. So I quickly had them more professionally formatted, had decent covers produced, and it just kept getting better and better. So I took it seriously. I made it into a business. But I also thought that there were opportunities here beyond simply republishing my out-of-print backlist. So I started publishing original work, and also I thought there might be a way to take advantage of the Kindle form to create a new kind of novel, and I launched The Dead Man. But we can get into that a little bit later. But you talked earlier about all the different publishing areas I'm into. It was not something I decided to do by intent. It just sort of happened. Many years ago, one of my mentors, Michael Gleason, the executive producer and creator of Remington Steele, gave me a very good piece of advice. You are a writer first and foremost. What you do is write. And that's what I'm doing. I go where the opportunities are. When it comes right down to it, I'm doing the same thing across the board. I'm writing.
Among your fiction that you had published up to that point in your career, you had done, I can't remember if you had finished already, but you were doing the Diagnosis Murder novels, which were and so people understand how cool this was. You were the guy in charge of the show for a period of time. That was the Dick Van Dyke Mystery Show. And then you wrote original novels based on that series. I think there were 8 books. And then you were doing original novels based on the Monk Mystery series. and people loved them. They were on the charts, and yet your self-publishing success is somewhere in there, like a light bulb went off, and you said, wait, I could make a lot more money just doing my own stuff. Why don't you tell us about that transition?
Well, tie-in writing is an unusual breed. It's a work-for-hire assignment. You don't own the underlying rights. Those rights are held by the studio or the creator of the show. It's a great way to get your name out to a large number of people. I did Diagnosis Murder not for the money, but because I loved the show, and I thought it was a great opportunity to do some stories that I wasn't able to do while I was running the show. With Monk, I was writing for Monk when Andy Breckman, the creator, was approached about doing Monk books, and he said, I'm not interested, but I think Lee Goldberg would be great doing them. And for me, that was a great way to keep my hand in the publishing business while I was still doing TV. I wasn't earning a living at it. It was more like a paying hobby, because the royalties and advances in tie-in writing are just atrocious. Even though I was at the high end for authors in that genre, it was still atrocious. But it was still taking a lot of work. I was still writing 3 or 4 tie-in books a year in addition to my TV work. And I was earning more from my out-of-print backlist than I was earning from writing the Monk books. And it was a no-brainer. Why keep writing these books when I earn more sleeping than I earn more writing these books? It's foolish. And also, the business had changed so radically during that time that it no longer made sense to write books that I didn't own. I had discovered the value of owning the copyright. So I don't look back with regret, because the business has changed completely. But it does sadden me that I've written 30-some books that I don't own, that belong to others. And that's a shame.
As you moved into the new paradigm and you started exploring it, one of the things that you did was you and your partner, William Brabkin, is that his name? You co-created a series of books called the Dead Man series, and these are like thriller or horror novels that have different authors. And you served as a showrunner, now I'm using the term, I don't know if everybody knows what that means. You were running it like you were running a TV show.
I broke into publishing by writing a series of men's action adventure novels back in the 80s called 357 Vigilante by Ian Ludlow. Ian for Fleming and Ludlow subbing on the shelf next to Robert Ludlum. And the books did well. That genre, the men's action adventure genre, doesn't really exist anymore. It's sort of the men's equivalent of Harlequin romances, and they were everywhere, The Executioner, Destroyer, and all that. I always had a fondness for those books. And I looked at the Kindle, and I realized this is a medium that offers the opportunity to write books that aren't necessarily 65,000 words, to write books that are as long as they need to be to tell the stories. You don't have to have a set word count. You just write the story that needs to be told. And I thought I should take advantage of the Kindle in a way beyond just republishing my out-of-print work. I thought this would be fun. So my writing partner, Bill Rabkin, and I had this pilot that we'd been pitching around Hollywood for ages that people always got excited about, but we never actually sold. And we'd written a spec screenplay based on it. So we turned that screenplay into a book, The Dead Man, Face of Evil. And we had, I think, 12 or 16 story ideas. And we went to authors we know and asked them to write books. We said, we'll share the rights with these books will be 50-50, the royalties. And this way, our audience will be introduced to you, and your audience will be introduced to us. So it's a win-win for everybody. And it's a chance to play in a different playground, sandbox. So we did one a month, and it got a lot of attention. They were very successful. And out of the blue, I got a call from Amazon saying, this is a really great idea. It's doing great, but it would do even better if we got behind it. And I was more than happy to sign on with Amazon. The Dead Man series became the first release from Amazon's 47 North science fiction, fantasy, and horror imprint. And Bill and I ran the book series very much like we run our television shows. We had essentially a concept, a franchise, and we would tell the writers about that franchise and offer them the opportunity to pitch us stories. We would develop the stories with them, and then they'd go off and write an episode, in this case, a 20,000 to 25,000 word novella. And we've done 24 of them to date, and also 7 compilation volumes and 7 audio books and 3 music videos, a theme song, and a Kindle serial.
There's so many directions to go with from this point, but let's start with, you said, okay, so Amazon steps in. What about the process changed with the imprint, and what part of that process stayed the same?
I stopped having to advance a lot of money. We were paying all the costs of copy editing and formatting and cover design and all of that. Amazon basically started picking up the check. Bill Rabkin and I still had complete control. We selected all the authors, we edited the books, and we even used the same copy editor. The only difference is Amazon was paying the copy editor. We used the same cover artist. What changed was we had the enormous marketing platform of Amazon. They really got behind the books and pushed them in a big way. Not only that, Amazon started doing these compilation volumes, 3 Dead Man novellas in one, and released them as novels and ebooks and paperbacks and audiobooks. So they expanded the Dead Man universe quite a bit. So I wasn't carrying the costs and just enjoying all the creative and financial benefits instead. It was a great way to get exposure and also to reach a larger pool of authors. For the most part, the authors that we were using were authors that were friends of mine or authors that I admired or self-published authors whose work I read and thought, hey, these guys are great. They deserve a wider platform. But there are also some authors I had been unfamiliar with that Amazon introduced me to, and that was great. Stant Latour, Kate Danley, a few others were authors I wasn't familiar with until Amazon said, I think these guys would be a good fit for The Dead Man.
One of the other kind of spokes of the wheel is that The Dead Man is now part of Kindle Worlds. So, as I understand it, that means any author who's interested can participate in that sandbox.
Yes, they came to me very early on and asked me if I'd be interested in The Dead Man being part of the Kindle Worlds format. And that was a natural, because a year or two ago, we had a contest that Amazon sponsored called You Can Write a Dead Man Novel, and we gave our readers the opportunity to write a Dead Man novel. We had hundreds of submissions, and from those we picked a book by Barry Napier, Streets of Blood, and that was his first published novel. I can't remember what the prize was. It was something like the book being published by Amazon and $1,000 or something like that. But we had lots of submissions, and some people didn't read the rules and actually wrote full novels. So I knew there were quite a few people out there who either had a full Dead Man novel sitting in their drawer or they had an outline and a sample chapter ready to go. So it seemed to me this would give those people an opportunity to get those books published. There are also a number of authors who wrote Dead Man novels that for whatever reason, we opted not to publish. That didn't mean they weren't good. They just didn't fit into the tone or style, whatever, of our franchise at the time, or there was a creative disagreement. Those books now could also be published through Kindle World. So I knew there was a lot of material out there that could be taken advantage of I shouldn't say taken advantage of, that these authors could recoup their investment in creativity and time.
So are you involved at all in these books, or are you as surprised as anybody when they show up in the Amazon store?
I am surprised as anybody when they show up in the Amazon store.
You're completely out of it.
I'm completely out of it. We wrote a Bible for Amazon to use in evaluating the books, but we've basically given everybody a free hand to do as they please with the Dead Man series, because there's so many ways you can go with it. And as we discovered in that contest, the readers and fans have a lot of great ideas that maybe I don't want to explore or that I wouldn't explore in our show, but see, there I go, in our series that they're welcome to try. I'm notorious, I think, in some circles for being very anti-fanfic, and some people have looked at this and said, look at that, Lee's a hypocrite. No, because these are books that are written under my permission, that they're written under the controls that I've established with Amazon, and I share in the exploitation of those books. The author is making money, and so am I. No one's undercutting the Dead Man franchise. And if there was a book that I found objectionable or that I thought hurt the quality of the franchise, it wouldn't be published. So I'm able to maintain control. My problem with fanfic has always been that it's been done without the author or rights holder's permission. I think if you have the permission of the author, that's great. If you don't, it's copyright infringement. And
really, Kindle Worlds, although they keep playing the fan fiction card, it is licensed fiction.
It's a tie-in. It's much more tie-in than fanfic. You are being authorized by the rights holder to write a work for hire. You don't own the book, but you're reaping the profits from it. So yes, it's a licensed work. It's a tie-in. No different than doing a Star Trek novel or a Monk novel or a supernatural novel.
From your vantage point, well, actually, you have done tie-in fiction, so you could speak to this also as an author, but as a rights holder who has other people writing books, is there value to an author trying to build a brand or a career in doing tie-in fiction? Does that bring anything back to, say, my brand if I write somebody else's characters, or is it just what do I get out of it other than the satisfaction?
You get money and you get publication.
Okay.
It can help your brand. I think most times it doesn't. I'll just use examples from my own career and my own family. My brother Todd is a LA Times Book Prize finalist for his literary fiction. He's well known in literary fiction circles, but he didn't have a wide audience. And I was approached to write Burn Notice books, and I said I wasn't the right person to do it, but I knew the guy who was, my brother Todd. And my brother wrote, I think, 5 or 6 Burn Notice novels. And it actually did expand his audience substantially. It made his backlist titles surge, and it made him more of a mainstream writer and has led to other opportunities. So for him, it worked out great. And for me, I was fortunate that my name became associated with Monk in a good way. Most times, a tie-in author's name never gets associated with the project. No one remembers who the author is. But I think because I wrote 15 Monk novels on my own, and a couple of those Monk novels became episodes, it did help me. So when I started writing books with Janet Ivanovich, they were pitching me as, the Monk book author, because that actually meant something. But I would say that's unusual. It's not the norm. I think in most cases, the people who write tie-in novels are absolutely anonymous, and it does nothing to build up your brand. It does give you relationships within the publishing world and may give you experience writing books, but the brand is what's selling those books, not the author who's writing them in most cases.
To move into like another phase of what you're doing, you are now a publisher. You just launched Brash Books.
This is a two-pronged thing. Joel and I have been very fortunate in that we've had, between the two of us, enormous success self-publishing our out-of-print backlist and original books. And our friends in the mystery world and crime fiction world are always coming to us saying, how can we do what you did? I mean, what's the secret sauce? Help us. And it's a lot of work. And on top of that, there are some authors I absolutely love who are out of print. Their books aren't available as ebooks. And for whatever reason, either because they don't have the entrepreneurial spirit or because they're dead, those books are not available. And I was having lunch with Joel at BoucherCon and saying there was an author whose books I really loved, and I was negotiating with the estate that I was going to self-publish them. I wanted to get them out there, so I would take what I learned about self-publishing and bring these books back. And Joel said, Lee, that's a business plan. You can do a publishing company with that. I mean, are there other books like that you love that you'd love to bring back? I said, they're fabulous, award-winning, highly acclaimed books that are just gathering dust that should be out there. At the same time, we had authors who were coming to us asking for advice. So we launched Brash Books. Our motto is, we publish the best crime fiction in existence. It's a brash claim, but we think our authors back it up. I would say that 95% of our authors have been nominated or have won major awards like the Edgar Award, the Seamus Award, the Anthony Award, or in the case of Death of the Detective, Mark Smith's book was a National Book Prize finalist. Our books are fabulous crime novels, thrillers, and spy novels, and we're not marketing them as vintage titles, as pulp paperbacks, but as exciting, terrific books that just happen to be set in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, or 2000s. If you look at Sue Grafton's Kinsey Millhone books, they're all set in the 1980s. No one cares. Sue Miller's new book is set in the 1990s. It's not about when the story takes place. It's about the story. And we're packaging these as contemporary books, not as, antiques, not as pulpy paperbacks. That's one of the things that sets us apart from our competitors. Award-winning, highly acclaimed, terrific books that are marketed as if they were published yesterday. We're not hiding the fact that they are reprints, but we're not exactly trumpeting that either.
That's a really interesting point. I didn't even make the connection that when you think of like hard case crime, yeah, those covers are very cool, but they're also very retro, and it puts you in a different mindset. And I'm looking at your covers right now. I have a stack of them here, and these are gorgeous. These are gorgeous books. But you're right; they're made as these are modern covers.
We are releasing this as if they're new releases that have never been published before. I think the mistakes our competitors make is they publish these as niche titles that appeal to people in their 60s or 70s who bought these books when they were gold medal paperbacks.
Right.
We don't want to do that. Or they're doing the opposite, which is putting these generic covers on. There are publishing companies that are buying thousands and thousands of backlist titles indiscriminately and putting these terrible, flat, generic covers on there. Each one of our books we're treating as our only title. And we're making sure that each book has a franchise look, either built around the series that the author writes or around the author themselves. So when you see the book, Whether you see the author's name or not, you know it's a Tom Kokonis book or a Maxine O'Callaghan book or a Dick Lockby book by the way we're presenting it. We decided we were going to do this first class or not at all. So these covers are beautiful. We've had so many people come up to us and say, we can't believe that you're a small publishing company. These look like they came out of the Big Six. And that's exactly what we're going for.
Physically, these books, like when the books show up at my door, the mailing label says Create Space. You're using Create Space as the actual printer?
We are. We are doing all of our production through Create Space. We're doing all of our Kindle formatting, our copy editing, our cover design. Soup to nuts is being done by Create Space. We met with them in Charleston a few months ago and were just blown away by what we saw out there. And we realized that we could push them to do their A game, and they certainly have. And it's been a fantastic relationship.
Now, I'm wondering, as an author who also does books through Create Space, what do I need to do to make my books look like your books? What are you doing with that machine? I mean, you said you met with them. Are they doing something different with your books, or is it I'm just not sending good enough files?
Well, talk about the covers. They're designing the covers from scratch, but we go in with a very clear idea of what we want and what we believe works. And when we get the mock-ups back from CreateSpace, we're very clear on our notes and our revisions. And I think that's borne by the fact that Joel and I have been in the publishing business for so long. We know what a professional cover looks like. We know what we want from a cover, and we're able to push them to deliver what we want. I think most self-published authors have no clue what a professional cover is supposed to look like. The layering, the font treatment, the kinds of images. So they end up having a self-published look, not because the designers at CreateSpace aren't able to deliver that wonderful look. It's because the customer doesn't know to ask for it or how to ask for it. And that just comes from observing what a great book looks like and what really pops on Amazon, having a strong central image, multiple layers to the image, a distinct font treatment, fonts that are not off of Microsoft Word, that are, they're off-the-shelf fonts, but not fonts that you find commonly in word processing. You want them to look that they've been treated. You want a style. You want an aesthetic. You want a franchise look to the books. So you have to have a clear sense of what you're writing about and what your brand is and how to articulate that in an image, because the cover artists are working from scratch. You've got to give them direction. So we've been fortunate that we've been able to articulate our brand and our franchises and our authors and what we're looking for very clearly to the designers, and they have just done an absolutely incredible job. And we get the matte finish to the books, and we have an off-white pages. We don't have that glossy cover and bright white pages. It also immediately screams self-published. Same with the type of font we use inside the text. We make sure it looks just like a normal book, not large print and unstyled. We make sure that we have a designed interior as well. It's not just print on a page.
Well, I will tell you, the results are amazing. You and Joel have made it clear on the website, and the website is brash-books.com, correct?
Yes.
And you've made it clear that you are looking for new books, new authors. For an author listening who writes crime fiction, what are you looking for as a publisher?
Great stories. Great stories that are well written and not riddled with cliches. We're asking writers to give us a 1 or 2 page overview of the book and the first 25 pages. And if we like that, we ask for the entire manuscript, and Joel and I read it ourselves. And we've already picked up 2 books through that process that we'll be publishing. And we have an editor. We have content editors. We're using former editors from Penguin Putnam and other publishing companies that Joel and I have worked with, who are working with us on a freelance basis to develop these books. We are not just reading the books and publishing them. We are having them developmentally edited, and we're putting that cost. We're a publishing company. We have to behave like one.
What kind of book lengths are you interested in?
About 65,000 words to 80,000 words. We do have a book that's massive. We are republishing Mark Smith's The Death of the Detective, and that's a 700-page book. But in general, we're looking for between 65,000 and 80,000 words. But we'll publish slightly shorter than that. We have some books that are in the 50,000 word range that were published in the 70s and early 80s. But for our original novels, we're trying to go a little bit higher than that.
What is the best way for an author to connect with or contact you for at Brash Books?
On our website. We have a page, the About page, which has in more detail our submission requirements. We even have a video on the page talking about our submission requirements, and you can send them into us through there. We will get back to you with the acceptance or rejection. I can't tell you how long because we've been inundated, and we're reading everything ourselves, but we will get back to you.
if a person listening to this, you say, do this one thing next, what would that be?
Write a good book. That's the most important thing. Too many people are in such a rush to be published, to make money. They're forgetting the most important thing is to write a good book. That's why there's this tsunami of swill on Amazon right now, because people are self-publishing far before they're ready to self-publish. There is no one way. One of the great things about the publishing world right now is there's so many different ways to be published, so many different opportunities to exploit your work, and the author is in control of all that. So there isn't one way, because each way has its benefits. Being traditionally published, whether through something like Brash Books or Penguin Putnam, the benefits are content editing and marketing and that sort of thing. But you do give up a significant chunk of royalties, even with us, and some control over the book. Self-publishing, you do it all yourself, but you don't have necessarily the resources to promote the book as well as you should, and maybe you're not getting the editing you need. On the other hand, it's a great way to get your book out there and to get it noticed when it might take years otherwise. So there is no one way to do it. The one important rule that I would stress is write your book really well and get it thoroughly copy edited and proofread. You only get one chance to make a first impression, and you don't want it to be a bad one.
All right. If people want to check you out online, you're at leegoldberg.com. That's where your blog is. That's where all the information is about your books, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then, as we said, Brash Books is brash-books.com. Well, Lee Goldberg, thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
This has been DIY Author. Please visit us online at DIYauthor.com and be sure to sign up for our email newsletter. If you enjoyed this program, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Until next time, keep writing. And remember, do it yourself doesn't have to mean do it alone.